You know, people say oil is evil. They're right, but not for the reason they think. Oil isn't evil. It's just honest. It reveals evil, especially when it's floating across the Gulf of Mexico, killing everything it touches, turning paradise into profit margins. Ah, yes, the BP oil spill, or as we called it in the boardrooms, an unfortunate media event with branding potential. Some saw ecological disaster. We saw a case study in reputation management. Let me tell you how the worst environmental catastrophe in American history became the greatest PR comeback of the decade. Let's rewind. The year is 2010. The planet's on Facebook. The markets are recovering from our little financial experiment in 2008. And BP British Petroleum is trying to convince the world it's gone green. Their slogan? Beyond Petroleum. Cute, right? Like putting a halo on a shark. Like calling a casino a gaming entertainment facility. It's not lying. It's strategic positioning. They spent hundreds of millions rebranding themselves as an eco-friendly energy company. The commercials had fields of sunflowers, wind turbines, happy children. Not a drop of crude oil in sight. Their logo? A green and yellow sunburst. Not a black oil derrick, a flower. A flower that bloomed from tar sands and offshore drilling. And it worked. Investors loved it. Consumers believed it. Everyone thought BP had traded oil rigs for solar panels. The stock price climbed. The brand value soared. They were the responsible oil company. The one that cared. Meanwhile, behind those sunflower commercials, they were cutting costs on safety measures, ignoring warning signs, pushing workers to drill faster, deeper, cheaper, but nobody saw that part. They saw the flower. Then, April 20th, 2010 happened. A date that started like any other, just another day printing money from the bottom of the ocean. The Deepwater Horizon rig was a marvel of engineering. A floating city of steel and ambition, drilling 18,000 feet below the seafloor, extracting liquid gold from the Earth's veins, until it exploded. Not just exploded, erupted. Like the Earth itself was vomiting back what we'd stolen. The Deepwater Horizon, a billion-dollar offshore drilling rig, blew up like a floating time bomb. 11 workers killed instantly, vaporized. Their families got phone calls that night that changed everything. But on the stock market, just a blip, an operational incident, until the cameras arrived. Millions of gallons of oil gushing into the Gulf. And there it was, the black truth, bubbling up from the depths like a confession. For 87 days, the world watched helplessly as oil poured into the sea at a rate of 60,000 barrels a day. That's 2.5 million gallons, every day, for 3 months. The spill covered an area the size of Oklahoma. Fish died, birds drowned, dolphins washed up on beaches like accusations. The coastline turned into a crime scene. And BP? BP turned into a villain with a press office and a very expensive law firm. You'd think this was a disaster for the company. It was. Their stock lost half its value in weeks. Pension funds panicked. The British Prime Minister called the American president. But also, not really. Because in capitalism, every catastrophe is just another market opportunity. Every disaster is a chance to demonstrate resilience. Every tragedy is a potential comeback story. At first, they panicked. Of course they did. Stock prices plummeted, lawsuits piled up, the CEO was grilled on live TV, Congress held hearings. Executives sweated under hot lights, and that's when the real genius kicked in. They didn't just clean up the spill, they cleaned up the story. Let's talk about Tony Hayward, BP's CEO at the time. A man who could have walked straight out of a villain casting call. Rich, arrogant, British. The accent alone made him sound guilty. While oil was drowning the Gulf, Tony told reporters, "I'd like my life back." Ah, yes, perfect empathy. 11 dead, an ocean on fire, and the poor CEO just wants a nap. He also said the environmental impact would be very, very modest. This while pelicans were drowning in crude on live television. While fishing families were watching their livelihoods dissolve. The internet tore him apart. Memes were born. Hashtags trended. Number BP cares became ironic overnight. But you know what happened after? BP did something brilliant. They sacrificed him, like throwing a virgin into a volcano to appease the gods. BP replaced him with someone smoother, someone American, someone who knew how to look sorry on camera. Bob Dudley, a Mississippi native with a drawl and a smile. They issued a heartfelt apology and pivoted the narrative. Suddenly, it wasn't BP destroys the ocean. It was BP takes responsibility. It wasn't BP kills wildlife. It was BP leads the cleanup. Clever, isn't it? When you can't control the event, control the story. They spent over $90 million on public relations in the first few months alone. Think about that number. $90 million. Not on cleanup. On messaging, TV spots, social media, press conferences, all focused on the same message. BP is cleaning up. BP cares. They hired fishermen, the same ones they put out of business, to work on cleanup crews. Then filmed them for commercials. "I'm working with BP to make this right." Brilliant. Turn your victims into your spokespeople. They bought up Google ads for search terms like oil spill, Gulf disaster, and environment. So when people searched for the truth, the first thing they saw was BP's version of it. They owned the keywords to their own crime. Genius. Pure, algorithmic genius. They even created a live stream camera of the leaking well, 24/7's coverage of their own failure. Sounds insane, right? But it worked. People watched, mesmerized. The media stayed focused on the drama of the leak, and not on the details of who caused it. It became entertainment, disaster, porn. People watched oil gush like they watch car crashes. Horrified but unable to look away. See, this wasn't just damage control. It was reputation, arbitrage. Turn guilt into virtue. Turn incompetence into leadership. Turn disaster into opportunity. It's the same trick we bankers use when we crash an economy. We call it stabilization. We become the solution to the problem we created. BP turned an ecological disaster into a PR strategy, and people bought it. Because in modern capitalism, if you say, "We're sorry," with the right lighting and music, you're a hero again. Now, let's talk about the money, the real money. BP eventually paid over $60 billion in fines, settlements, and cleanup costs. Sounds like justice, right? Sounds like accountability? Not really. That's just the cost of doing business. A line item on a spreadsheet. Miscellaneous environmental expenses. They made it back within a few years. Oil prices went up, production resumed, investors came back. The algorithms forgot. The traders moved on. In fact, their stock recovered faster than most people's retirement funds after 2008. By 2014, they were profitable again. By 2018, they were booming. They wrote off billions in tax deductions from their losses. Yes, they deducted their own disaster. The government fined them with one hand and gave them tax breaks with the other. Every dollar spent on cleanup, tax deductible. Every settlement paid, business expense. That's efficiency. That's the beauty of corporate tax law. Meanwhile, the real victims, fishermen, small business owners, coastal families, got a few $1,000s in compensation and a free commercial promising hope. The cleanup workers got sick from the chemicals used to clean the spill. Corexit, the dispersant they used. 2 million gallons of it. It didn't clean the oil. It just made it sink. Out of sight, out of mind, out of the news cycle. Those chemicals, by the way, were made by another company BP conveniently had investments in. That's what we call a closed profit loop. Vertical integration of disaster. Tragic but monetized. Every aspect of the catastrophe became a revenue stream. Here's the part no one talks about. BP didn't just recover their reputation, they re-engineered it. They launched BP America, Restoring the Gulf. A website, a campaign, a promise. They funded research on marine recovery, wildlife preservation, and energy innovation. But here's the trick. They funded the research that studied their own damage. They controlled the science that judged them. They filmed documentaries about themselves. Heroic music, slow-motion waves, smiling workers scrubbing rocks. They became the narrator of their own crime story, the hero of their own villain arc. They even sponsored education programs and tourism ads to revitalize the Gulf. Come back to the Gulf Coast. The beaches are beautiful again. Never mind the tar balls that still wash up. Never mind the deformed fish. Never mind the cancer clusters. And every one of those feel-good commercials had the same glowing green logo and that comforting voice, BP Beyond Petroleum. It was perfect. A redemption arc, written by the very villains of the story, directed by Madison Avenue, produced by capitalism itself. See, this is the brilliance of modern PR. You don't deny wrongdoing anymore. That's amateur hour. You own it, then rebrand it. BP didn't say, "We didn't spill oil." They said, "We're fixing the problem, and we care about the planet." They said, "We're part of the solution." It's like robbing a bank, then donating to a financial literacy program. It's like burning down a forest, then planting a tree, and filming yourself planting it. And it worked. Public sentiment recovered within a few years. Their commercials even won marketing awards. Awards for cleaning up their image, not the ocean. The Cannes Lions gave them recognition. The PR industry applauded their crisis management. They became a case study at Harvard Business School. How to turn disaster into opportunity. Now, let's zoom out for a second. Let's see the bigger picture. BP wasn't the first, and they won't be the last. Exxon, Shell, Chevron, they all watched closely and took notes. They realized something powerful. Environmental catastrophe isn't a failure, it's a branding opportunity. It's a chance to show you care, to demonstrate corporate responsibility, to prove you can change, even if you don't. Today, every oil company has a sustainability department. Every CEO talks about net zero, carbon neutral by 2050. Never mind that 2050 is far enough away that they'll all be retired or dead. They plant a few trees, release glossy reports, and pat themselves on the back. Meanwhile, they're still drilling, still dumping, still lobbying, still funding politicians who deny climate change, still suppressing research that proves their guilt. But now, they've got a green filter on the destruction. Instagram-ready environmentalism. We call it eco-propaganda. You call it progress. You see, the genius of BP wasn't in the oil. It was in the optics. They taught corporations everywhere how to survive the impossible. Don't hide from your disaster. Commodify it. Be the villain, the victim, and the hero all in one brand. Control every angle of the narrative. Own your shame so completely that it becomes your strength. BP became a case study in business schools. They turned one of the worst environmental disasters in history into a masterclass in crisis communication. And investors? They loved it. Because the only real sin in capitalism is failing to bounce back. Do you know what the CEO after Hayward said? Bob Dudley called BP's recovery an example of resilience. Resilience. Imagine that the company that poisoned the Gulf gets praised for overcoming adversity, like a murderer being congratulated for attending the funeral. It's almost poetic. It's almost beautiful. If it wasn't so perfectly evil. And that, my friend, is the ultimate lesson of the oil spill. Not that greed is bad. Not that corporations should be held accountable. No, it's that with enough money, marketing, and manipulation, you can rewrite any story. You can make people forget. You can make them forgive. Hell, you can make them grateful. Let's not forget the PR slogan BP used after it all. We will make this right. 5 words. Simple, direct, reassuring. It's the same line every guilty executive uses, the verbal equivalent of wiping your hands with a $100 bill. They didn't make it right. They made it profitable. They made it disappear. BP's market cap today? Over $100 billion. The Gulf? Still contaminated. The ocean never fully recovered, but the shareholders did. The dolphins are still dying, but the dividends are flowing. And that's the moral of the story. People call the oil spill a tragedy, but in my world, it was a marketing revolution, a paradigm shift, a new template for corporate survival. BP proved that if you own the narrative, you don't need to be innocent. You just need to look remorseful enough to invest in. Because here's the dark truth. The public doesn't actually want justice, they want closure. And closure is easy to sell. Closure comes in 30-second spots, in press releases, in green logos and promise campaigns. Justice is messy, complicated, expensive. Closure is clean, simple, marketable. So the next time you see a glossy commercial about how a giant corporation cares about the planet, just remember, somewhere, deep in a boardroom, someone's smiling like me, because we figured it out long ago. There's nothing you can't spin if you wrap it in the language of hope. BP didn't just clean the ocean, they cleaned your memory. They scrubbed your outrage. They bleached your anger white. And we made sure you'd keep buying their gas with a clear conscience. Every time you fill up your tank, you're funding the next disaster and the PR campaign that will make you forget it. BP, how an oil spill became a PR strategy. Brought to you by greed, guilt, and the genius of spin. Remember, we're not destroying the planet. We're transitioning to renewable energy. Eventually. Maybe. If it's profitable, I'm the evil banker. And business is still booming. Just like the Deepwater horizon, right before it sank.